Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honourable Senators, I rise today to speak at third reading to Bill C-7, an act to amend the Criminal Code, Medical Assistance in Dying. I'd like to thank the sponsor of the bill, Senator Petitclerc, the witnesses who appeared before Senate and House committees, and Canadians who have made their views known in consultations, correspondence, and many other ways. The Senate itself has played a special role in offering sober second thought to this issue. I thank all senators, and for me, it is an honor to be part of this debate today. I also want to recognize and thank my friend, journalist Sandra Martin, for her award-winning book titled A Good Death, published in 2016, which chronicles the journey toward a good death in Canada and gives voice to the many Canadian heroes who told their stories, hoping to change the criminal code prohibition against assisted dying. People like Sue Rodriguez, Gloria Taylor, and Kay Carter, who went all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and others like Dr. Donald Lowe, the Toronto microbiologist, who implored his fellow physicians to accept dying with dignity, Austin Bastable, who was the first Canadian to go to the United States to have assisted death, and Gillian Bennett, whose letter urging a change in the law was released after her suicide. We should understand, Senators, that medical assistance in dying is not something imposed on Canadian society by the government or by the courts. Instead, it is a movement emerging from these and so many others who came forward over 3 decades to call for a way to die with dignity at a time of their own choosing to alleviate tremendous pain and suffering. We should also understand that these demands reflect a profound evolution of social values that have shaped Canadian society over many decades. When I was growing up in the 1950s and 60s, assistance in dying was unthinkable. It was a view reinforced by religious and legal sanctions. But all of that changed as a result of the growing influence of the baby boom generation. This generation's values, suspicion of authority, a desire to control one's destiny, and a desire for respect and recognition eventually came to dominate through the decades of the 1970s and beyond. It is this wish to control our fate, sometimes described as the desire for autonomy and for agency, that lies at the heart of this issue. When Sue Rodriguez asked in 1992, "Who owns my life? And whose body is this?" the answer was already clear, at least to Canadians, if not to our governments and courts. The public themselves have always been ahead of their governments and the courts in calling for change when it comes to assisted death. Back in 1992, Environics research found that 2/3 of Canadians said they supported euthanasia, which was the terminology of the day which Senator Seidman reminded of just a few minutes ago. And in 1994, 69% of Canadians told Environics that, in their view, those who assist in the suicide of a seriously ill patient should not be charged with a crime. Yet, contemporaneous with these beliefs, in 1993, the Supreme Court of Canada turned back Sue Rodriguez's appeal for assistance in death. Subsequent efforts by lawmakers failed to achieve reform despite public support for change. And even today, after the Supreme Court decision in Carter, after Bill C-14, and looking at the bill before us now, the government still appears unwilling to go quite as far as the public themselves would take us. Now, in my own deliberations on Bill C-7, I have focused on 2 concerns: the difficult issues concerning people suffering from dementias and those suffering from mental illness. Colleagues, my mother lived with Alzheimer's and died from its effects, and I will never forget her descent into darkness and her fear and her profound sadness. In considering my vote on C-7, and particularly on Senator Wallin's amendment, I tried to think about what would be best for my mom and for the many people afflicted with these terrible diseases. The answer did not come easily. Well, you know, nothing comes easily when it comes to assisted dying. I was moved by the discussion I had with Lisa Poole and Mary Beth Whiten from Dementia Advocacy Canada several weeks ago. Both women have lived experience with dementia and providing care to loved ones with dementia. They told me that cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment is a consuming fear for many with a diagnosis of dementia, and that the fear of how they will be treated after losing capacity inhibits them from living the best life possible. They told me that by removing the requirement that death be reasonably foreseeable and allowing people to set out individual timelines ahead of time to receive medical assistance in dying based on the observable progression of the condition would greatly improve the end-of-life experiences of those with dementias. Open timelines are also supported by the MAID Assessors and Providers Association, as well as by a majority of Canadians. In an Ipsos poll, 82% of the public felt that those diagnosed with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia should be able to plan ahead for medical assistance in dying. This consensus was echoed as well in the Department of Justice online consultation on MAID, where a total of more than 235,000 people, that means about 79% of those participating in the consultation, supported advance planning. Yet again, Canadians themselves are ahead of their lawmakers in supporting change with respect to medical assistance in dying. Senator Wallin's amendment is clearly focused on the acceptance of these so-called advanced requests. At the same time, the Senate itself, including the Standing Senate Committee on Legal and Constitutional Affairs, did not examine this topic in great depth, including the potential safeguards that might exist or should, or possibly should exist around this practice. This is regrettable. I think we need more examination of advance requests. But in the end, I came to the conclusion that Senator Wallin's amendment was a step in the right direction, and I supported it in the hope of advancing the study of and the consideration of advance requests. The other focus of my concern has been the exclusion from MAID for those with mental illness, an issue that we in the Chamber have proposed to remedy by passing the amendment introduced by Senator Couture. Colleagues, we've had much discussion on this topic, which I will not repeat here. My concerns with the exclusion were well articulated by Mr. David Roberge of the Canadian Bar Association during his testimony at the House of Commons Justice Committee. He said, quote, "The issue with excluding all persons with mental illness from the MAID legislation is that it is contrary to what the Truchon decision concluded. It infers vulnerability on a collective basis in reference to a group seen as vulnerable people. We support a more patient-centric approach." Senator Couture used 3 words to summarize his view of the exclusion. It is discriminatory, it is stigmatizing, and it is not constitutional. I think the sunset clause strikes the right balance at this point in time. In supporting these and the other accepted amendments to expand MAID, I fully recognize and respect the views of so many Canadians, especially those from the disability community, who are fearful about what C-7 will bring. I also understand that the more restrictive aspects of this legislation are the government's efforts to answer such concerns. Colleagues, Bill C-7 is a point on an arc, a work in progress. But as amended, it's a vital step toward achieving better outcomes for Canadians as they near end of life. It reflects the direction that they favor. I support the amended bill, and I look forward to the government's response. Thank you. Merci. Miigwech.